Hello, and welcome to Bedtime Stories. My name is Frank Padour, and I'll be reading to you a Grimm Brothers fairy tale entitled The Fisherman and His Wife. A fisherman once lived contentedly with his wife in a little hut near a lake, and he went every day to throw his line into the water. One day, after angling for a long time without even a bite, the line suddenly sank to the bottom, and when he pulled it up again, there was a large flounder hanging to the end of it. "Oh dear," exclaimed the fish. "Good fisherman, let me go, I pray you. I am not a real fish, but a prince in disguise. I shall be of no use to you, for I am not good to eat. Put me back again into the water, and let me swim away." "Ah," said the man, "you need not make such a disturbance. I would rather let a flounder who can speak swim away than keep it." With these words, he placed the fish back again in the water, and it sunk to the bottom, leaving a long streak of blood behind it. Then the fisherman rose up and went home to his wife in the hut. "Husband," said the wife, "have you caught anything today?" "I caught a flounder," he replied, "who said he was an enchanted prince. So I threw him back into the water and let him swim away." "Did you not wish?" she asked. "No," he said. "What should I wish for?" "Why, at least a better hut than this dirty place. How unlucky you did not think of it. He would have promised you whatever you asked for. However, go and call him now. Perhaps he will answer you." The husband did not like this task at all. He thought it was nonsense. However, to please his wife, he went and stood by the sea. When he saw how green and dark it looked, he felt much discouraged, but made up a rhyme and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray, and talk to me, for my wife, Dame Isabel, sent me here a tale to tell." Then the fish came swimming up to the surface and said, "What do you want with me?" "Ah," said the man, "I caught you and let you go again today, without wishing, and my wife says I ought to have wished, for she cannot live any longer in such a miserable hut as ours, and she wants a better one." "Go home, man," said the fish. "Your wife has all she wants." So the husband went home, and there was his wife, no longer in her dirty hovel, but sitting at the door of a neat little cottage, looking very happy. She took her husband by the hand and said, "Come in and see how much better it is than the other old hut." So he followed her in and found a beautiful parlor and a bright stove in it, a soft bed in the bedroom, and a kitchen full of earthenware and tin and copper vessels for cooking, looking so bright and clean, and all of the very best. Outside was a little farmyard with hens and chickens running about, and, beyond, a garden containing plenty of fruit and vegetables. "See," said the wife, "is it not delightful?" "Ah, yes," replied her husband. "As long as it is new, you will be quite contented. But after that, we shall see." "Yes, we shall see," said the wife. A fortnight passed, and the husband felt quite happy, till one day his wife startled him by saying, "Husband, after all, this is only a cottage, much too small for us, and the yard and the garden cover very little ground. If the fish is really a prince in disguise, he could very well give us a larger house. I should like, above all things, to live in a large castle built of stone. Go to thy fish, and ask him to build us a castle." "Ah, wife," he said, "this cottage is good enough for us. What do we want of a castle?" "Go along," she replied. "The flounder will be sure to give us what you ask." "Nay, wife," said he, "the fish gave us the cottage at first, but if I go again, he may be angry." "Never mind," she replied. "He can do what I wish easily, and I have no doubt he will, so go and try." The husband rose to go with a heavy heart. He said to himself, "This is not right." And when he reached the sea, he noticed that the water was now dark blue, yet very calm. So he began his old song. "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray, and talk to me, for my wife, Dame Isabel, wishes what I fear to tell." "Now then, what do you want?" said the fish, lifting his head above the water. "Oh dear," said the fisherman in a frightened tone. "My wife wants to live in a great stone castle." "Go home, man, and you will find her there," was the reply. The husband hastened home, and where the cottage had been there stood a great stone castle, and his wife tripped down the stairs, saying, "Come with me, and I will show you what a beautiful dwelling we have now." So she took him by the hand, and led him into the castle, through halls of marble, while numbers of servants stood ready to usher them through folding doors into rooms where the walls were hung with tapestry, and the furniture was of silk and gold. From these they went into other rooms equally elegant, where crystal-looking glasses hung on the walls, and the chairs and tables were of rosewood and marble. The soft carpet sunk beneath the footstep, and rich ornaments were arranged about the rooms. Outside the castle was a large courtyard, in which were stables and cowsheds, horses and carriages, all of the most expensive kind. Beyond this was a beautiful garden, full of rare flowers and delicious fruit, besides several acres of field and parkland, in which deer, oxen, and sheep were grazing. All, indeed, that the heart could wish was here. "Well," said the wife, "is not this beautiful?" "Yes," replied her husband, "and you will think so as long as the humor lasts, and then, I suppose, you will want something more." "We must think about that," she replied, and then they went to bed. Not many mornings after this, the fisherman's wife rose early. It was just daybreak, and she stood looking out, with her arms akimbo, over the beautiful country that lay before her. Her husband did not stir, and presently she exclaimed, "Get up, husband, and come to the window. Look here, ought you not to be king of all this land? Then I should be queen. Go and tell the fish I want you to be king." "Oh, wife," he replied, "I don't want to be king. I can't go and ask that." "Well," she replied, "if you don't care about being king, I wish to be queen, so go tell the fish what I say." "It's no use, wife. I cannot." "Why not? Come, there's a good man. Go at once. I must be queen." The husband turned away in a sorrowful mood. "It is not right," he said. "It is not right." However, he went, and as he stood on the seashore, he noticed that the water looked quite dark and rough, while the waves foamed and dashed against the shore, as if they were angry. But still he said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray, and talk to me, for my wife, Dame Isabel, wishes what I fear to tell." "What?" cried the fish, rising to the surface. "She is not content, and she wants to be queen? Very well then, go home, and you will find her so." When he got near home, he found the castle had disappeared, and he saw at a distance a palace, which seemed to grow larger as he approached it. At one end was a large tower, and a noble terrace in front. A sentinel stood at the gates, and a band of soldiers with drums and trumpets were performing martial music. On arriving at the palace, he found that it was built with precise marble, without no expense had been spared. The furniture was of the most precious materials, and the curtains and carpets fringed with gold. The husband passed through the doors into a state apartment of immense size, and there sat his wife upon a lofty throne of gold and precious stones. She had a crown of gold upon her head, and a gold scepter in her hand adorned with jewels. On each side of her stood 6 pages in a row, each one a head taller than the one next to him. He went up to his wife and said, "Ah, wife, so you are queen now?" "Yes," she said, "I am queen." He stood looking at her for a long time, till at last he spoke again. "Well, wife, now that you are queen, we have nothing left to wish for. We must give up wishing." "No, indeed," she replied. I am not yet satisfied. Time and tide wait for no man, nor will they wait for me. I am as impatient as ever. Go to your enchanted prince again, and tell him I want to be empress." "Empress?" cried the husband. "It is beyond his power. I am certain. The empress has the highest place in the kingdom." "What?" she replied. "Don't you know that I am queen, and that you must obey me, although you are my husband? Go at once. If the prince's disguise can make a queen, he can also make an empress." So the husband went away, muttering to himself, "To keep on wishing in this way is not good. I am certain the fish will put an end to it this time." When he reached the shore of the sea, it was quite black, and the waves rushed so furiously over the rocks that he was terrified. But he contrived to repeat his wild verses again, saying, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray, and talk to me, for my wife, Dame Isabel, wishes what I fear to tell." Up came the fish. "Well," he said, "what does she want now?" "Ah," said the husband timidly, "she wants to be empress." "Go home, man," he replied. "She has her wish." And on his return he found his wife acting as empress in a palace of marble, with alabaster statues, and gold and pearls, and soldiers and lords and barons bowing to her. But she was not satisfied even now, and at last told her husband that she wished to be the Pope, and that he must go to the fish and tell him so. "No," he said, "that is impossible. The Pope is the head of the church. You cannot have that wish." "But I will be Pope," she exclaimed. So he obliged to go, and when he reached the shore, the sea was running mountains high, and roaring and beating against the shores, and it was such terrible weather that the sky looked quite black. However, he ventured to call up the fish with the old song, and told him of his wife's wish. "Go home," he said, "your wife is Pope." He turned to go back, but what a change he found! The palace had vanished, and in its place stood a large cathedral surrounded by marble pillars. On a high throne sat his wife, with thousands of lights around her, dressed in robes embroidered with gold, and wearing a large golden crown on her head. Candles of all kinds stood near her, some as thick as a tower, others as small as a rushlight, while emperors, kings, and nobles kneeled at her footstool and kissed her slippers. "Well, wife," said the husband, "so you are a pope?" "Yes," she said, "I am." He stood still for a time watching her, and at length he remarked, "You cannot be higher than the Pope, so I suppose now you are content." "I am not quite sure," she said, but when evening came, they retired to rest. She could not sleep for thinking of what she should next wish for. Her husband slept soundly, for he had tired himself the day before. But she rose even before the day broke, and stood at the window to watch the sun rise. It was a beautiful sight, and she exclaimed as she watched it, "Oh, if I only had the power to make the sun rise. Husband, wake up," she added, pushing him in the ribs with her elbows. "Wake up, and go and tell the enchanted prince that I wish to be equal to the Creator, and make the sun rise." The husband was so frightened at this that he tumbled out of bed, and exclaimed, "Ah, wife, what didst thou say?" She repeated the words. Her husband fell on his knees before her. "Don't ask me to do this. I cannot," he cried. But she flew into a rage and drove him from the house. The poor fisherman went down to the shore in terror, for a dreadful storm had arisen, and he could scarcely stand on his feet. Ships were wrecked, boats tossed to and fro, and rocks rolled into the sea. In his terror and confusion, he heard the voice from amidst the storm. "Your wife wishes to be equal to the Creator. Go home, man, and find her again in her dirty hovel by the sea." He went home, to find the glories, the riches, and the palaces vanished, and his wife sitting in the old hut, an example of the consequences of impious ambition. That was a Grimm Brothers fairy tale entitled The Fisherman and His Wife. Thank you for listening. Good night and sweet dreams.